Look at the bread on your counter or the rice in your pantry. You probably think of it as the foundation of human civilization, the ultimate thing that saved us from starvation. We are taught in school that 10,000 years ago, humans figured out how to plant seeds, and in doing so, we conquered nature. We built cities. We created art. We invented writing. Agriculture is the ultimate triumph of the human mind. But for 300,000 years, your ancestors thrived without it. And if you could take a time machine back to the exact moment we made that switch, you wouldn't see a triumph. You would see a trap snapping shut. Because for the vast majority of human history, farming wasn't a breakthrough. It was a disaster. And the skeletons of our earliest farmers prove it. Most people assume that when hunter-gatherers started farming, their lives immediately got easier. They had a steady food supply. They didn't have to wander around looking for berries or chase down mammoths. They could just sit in one place and watch the wheat grow. But that is a modern illusion. When physical anthropologists started digging up the graves of early agricultural societies in the Levant and Europe, they expected to find a population that was thriving. Instead, they found a biological nightmare. The skeletons of early farmers were significantly shorter than the skeletons of the hunter-gatherers who lived just a few thousand years before them. Their bones were riddled with lesions and signs of severe malnutrition. Their teeth were rotting out of their skulls. Their jaws actually shrank because they weren't chewing tough wild foods anymore. Hunter-gatherers had almost no cavities. Early farmers had mouths full of decay. Why? Because they were eating a massive, monotonous diet of cheap carbohydrates. They traded the diverse, nutrient-dense diet of the wild for a single, starchy crop. They were working harder, eating worse, and dying younger. The archaeological record doesn't show a species rising. It shows a species slowly starving in a field of its own making. Think about what farming actually requires on a daily basis. A hunter-gatherer works maybe 3 to 4 hours a day to find enough food. The rest of the day is spent resting, socializing, and surviving. But a farmer never stops. You have to clear the land. You have to plant the seeds. You have to weed the fields. You have to guard the crops from birds, from insects, from drought, and from floods. And if you do all of that perfectly, and you survive until harvest, you now have a massive surplus of food, which means you now have something for everyone else to steal. This is where the real nightmare begins. Hunter-gatherer societies were largely egalitarian. If someone in the tribe got too bossy, you could just walk away. You couldn't hoard food because it would rot. But grain can be stored. Grain can be taxed. Grain can be stolen. The moment you created a surplus of food, you created a target. The moment you tie yourself to a piece of land, you tie yourself to its defense. You can no longer just walk away from a conflict. You have to fight for the soil. And to protect that target, you needed walls, you needed weapons, and you needed leaders to organize the defense. With surplus came the need to record it, which gave us writing. But writing wasn't used for poetry. It was used for tax receipts. It was used to track who owed what to the king. And when people couldn't pay, they were enslaved. Agriculture didn't just give us food. It gave us inequality. It gave us war. It gave us a concept of property. But here's what's fascinating. The worst part of agriculture wasn't the back-breaking labor or the cavities or the constant threat of violence. It was the microscopic world. When humans started living in permanent settlements, they started living in their own waste. Hunter-gatherers moved camp constantly. They left their trash behind, but farmers stayed put. The water sources became contaminated. The population density skyrocketed. The crowded, filthy conditions of early farming villages created the perfect incubator for pathogens. A cough in a hunter-gatherer camp might infect 5 people. A cough in an early farming village could infect 500. For the first time in 3 million years, humans were living in conditions where infectious diseases could spread like wildfire. Measles, tuberculosis, smallpox, cholera. These are not ancient diseases. They are agricultural diseases. They are zoonotic plagues that jumped from the very livestock we domesticated. The cows, the pigs, the chickens. We brought them into our homes, and they gave us their pathogens. The skeletons of early farmers show massive spikes in infectious lesions. The average lifespan plummeted. Early cities were essentially death traps. They only survived because people kept migrating in from the countryside. The birth rate in early agricultural settlements was often lower than the death rate. They were consuming human lives just to keep the wall standing. When you look at the archaeological record, the transition to farming looks less like a civilization rising and more like a slow-motion biological collapse. So why did we do it? If it was so terrible, why didn't we just go back to the forest? The answer is brutally simple. Once you start farming, you can't stop. The population grows. You need more food to feed the new mouths, so you plant more crops, which requires more labor, which supports more population. You become trapped in a feedback loop of your own making. You traded your freedom, your health, and your equality for the ability to sustain a larger number of humans. We didn't domesticate wheat. Wheat domesticated us. It forced us to clear its fields, carry its water, and protect its seeds. And today, 10,000 years later, you are still living inside that trap. You wake up at the same time every day. You go to a job you don't love to earn money, to buy the food that was grown by the system we invented in the mud of the Fertile Crescent. You are running on a biological operating system that was overwritten 10 millennia ago. Your body still craves the sugar and fat that kept you alive on the savannah, but now it's trapped in a body that sits in a chair for 10 hours a day. We look back at them as primitives, but they were the ones who understood how to live within the limits of their environment. We are the ones who broke the machine. We think we are the masters of the planet, but if you look at the calories we consume and the hours we work to produce them, you have to ask yourself, did we conquer nature, or did we just build a much larger cage?